This review covers what I would call the heart of Gary Habermas's On the Resurrection, Volume 1, Evidences. And that is parts 3 and 4 of this book, which are the minimal historical facts of the resurrection, along with 6 other historical facts, which total 12 facts in all that are used to support the historicity of the resurrection. The basic argument for the resurrection, according to Habermas, goes as follows. We know these 12 facts to be true, just as well as we can know just about any facts in history. Conservatives, liberals, Christians, and atheists, along with those agnostics who just shrug their shoulders at everything, are all in relative agreement around these 12 facts or 12 pieces of evidence that support the resurrection. The logical result of believing all 12 of these facts should be, and I'm in whole agreement with this, if you accept the standard historical views that all of these facts did occur in history, the logical result should be a belief in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Now, in this book, Habermas doesn't just simply count all the scholars and tell you to take their word for it and believe these facts, but he thoroughly goes through in an abundance of details. This is a big book and shows you why each of these facts are supported by both Christians and skeptical scholars alike, to help you see that the Christian faith is founded in concrete facts and not upon imaginary theories. So if you have a few minutes, I would love to go over with you the 12 facts that Habermas brings up as the evidences for the resurrection. And also what I see are the strengths and weaknesses in his presentation in the core of On the Resurrection, Volume 1, Evidences. Welcome to Rev Reads. If you want to discover more books that will help you to have a strong foundation to believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, please subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with the most current book reviews. Also, please like this video, share it with others to help them know about the work of Gary Habermas, and also to know what are the 12 historical facts that you can use when you're talking to others about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Habermas presents the reader with 12 historical facts for the resurrection, and he breaks them up into 2 categories. Category 1 is for the strongest facts, the strongest minimal facts for the resurrection. These are the strongest due to their importance in establishing the historicity that Jesus rose from the dead. Category 2 are 6 other facts that can help to bolster the case, but they are not as quite as significant as the first 6 minimal facts, which are fact number 1, the death of Jesus on the cross. Habermas carefully lays out why we can be confident that Jesus died on a Roman cross. The swoon theory that Jesus was on the cross but then didn't die on the cross is shown to be ridiculous and supported not on the evidence we have. But the evidence we have shows us that Jesus truly died on a Roman cross. And this is also a very important point of apologetics, especially when speaking to Muslims, since they believe Jesus did not die on the cross, but another stood in his place. Fact number 2, the disciples' experiences. Thanks primarily to the early sermon summaries in Acts and the crucial creed of 1 Corinthians 15, we can be confident that the disciples' testimony was, they saw the risen Jesus. The early accounts of the resurrection don't read as folklore passed down through stories to amaze, but as the genuine experience of the disciples who saw the crucified and then resurrected Jesus. Fact number 3. The earliest proclamation of the gospel. The heart of the gospel has always been the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The clear testimony in the New Testament is that from day one, the good news message of the church was not, here's how to be a better person, or look, we created a law that's better than the Torah, or why don't you come join our new community group? No, the message from day one was, Jesus has risen from the dead. There was no development of views of the church that ended up forming a resurrection tale to illustrate the changes that one would see by following the teachings of Jesus. But the resurrection was the core message from day one, which one would expect only if the resurrection truly occurred. Fact number 4, the disciples' transformation. The disciples went from clueless followers to boastful witnesses in such a dramatic change that it should require an event such as the resurrection. The disciples were utterly convinced that they had experienced the literal appearance of Jesus as one who was bodily resurrected. Their willingness to die for their faith shows us that those beliefs were sincere. Now, you could argue that they were sincerely wrong, but you can't argue that they were not sincere. And when you add their sincerity and conviction to the 11 other pieces of evidence, this ends up making this piece particularly strong. The next 2 facts are the conversions of James, the brother of Jesus, and the Apostle Paul. These points are rather simple. Both James and Paul came to follow and believe in Jesus after his death, as a result of resurrection appearances. The average student of the Bible knows this, and Habermas shows why scholars also agree that James and Paul didn't begin to follow Jesus until after the crucifixion. These 2 men are also the 2 most unlikely of converts. First, we have a brother who rejected Jesus as Jesus was doing wonderful works before him, and then we have a Pharisee of the Pharisees who lost all of his societal privileges to confess Jesus as the Christ. Their conversions not only existing at all, but their conversions especially taking place after the death of Jesus because of resurrection appearances are huge pieces of evidence that they converted because they saw the risen Jesus. These are your 6 strongest pieces of evidence, and when you put them together, it's really hard to argue that Jesus did not rise from the dead. And Habermas backs all of these up by showing that if we believe any of these from history, we should believe that Jesus rose from the dead. And if we believe anything at all from history, we should believe these pieces of information. The following 6 pieces of evidence are the empty tomb, Jesus' burial, Christian preaching began in Jerusalem. It's hard to tell the story of the resurrection as a lie in the city where Jesus was actually crucified and his physical body was buried. The church began to meet on Sunday. The Sunday worship of the church points to the importance of the resurrection for the early church. And finally, the centrality of the message of Jesus' death and resurrection. This is similar to the evidence on the earliest proclamation of the gospel. This is the point that it is hard to understand why the church would center so much of its message and its teaching and its focus on the resurrection from the very beginning if it didn't happen at all. This actually was my favorite to read of all 12 of the pieces of evidence for my own encouragement and edification, because it just drove home so much how the resurrection of Jesus Christ should be the center of all I believe, of all I do, of who I am. So those are the 12 facts. And here in brief are my pros and cons on how Habermas presented them. The cons first. These chapters can feel repetitive at times. The reason, the same passages serve as evidence for multiple points. So much time is spent in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and that early creedal statement on the importance of the resurrection of Jesus and the eyewitnesses to the resurrection that at times I felt like my eyes were kind of glazing over because I had already read so much on that passage. Now, I understand why Habermas went to that passage so many times in so many different points. He had to do it. But it doesn't always make for the best reading when you're reading so much through this book in just a few weeks as I did. Second, his use of Bart Ehrman at times felt excessive. I get why he goes to Ehrman so often. Bart is an agnostic atheist, and if Ehrman says that a fact is true, well, it should allow the most skeptical of readers to begrudgingly say, yeah, If he said it's true, it probably happened. But like my first complaint, I get why he quotes Bart Ehrman so often, but I still found it really annoying. Call me petty if you want to as a reviewer, but this is my review and that's how I feel about it. So those are my criticisms, very, very minor in my opinion. And to compare them with my positives are so many that I cannot list them all in this review. First, his selection of historical facts is excellent. I believe they should be very persuasive. Second, he thoroughly backed up every single piece of evidence using as many non-Christian sources as possible to show that this isn't just looking at facts as if someone's reading them through Christian lenses, but even the non-Christians who have taken the time to study these facts still comes away saying, yeah, they happened. Third, he writes almost from a perspective of a skeptic at times. And I see this as a wonderful way to write the book. He is not writing this book for those preaching to the choir who already believe. I believe this book is really written as an apology for the gospel. He is arguing for people to believe in these facts. And if we're going to use this information in real evangelism, we're going to be using it for people who don't believe in the resurrection. And I think the way Habermas wrote prepared us to use these facts when presenting them to people who do not believe. Fourth thing I loved about this book is it is just a joy to read all that we have to back up our faith in the resurrection. I totally believe that if Jesus didn't rise from the dead, I am wasting my life. My life is a joke. And it is such an encouragement to read how strong the evidences are for my faith in the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Finally, I've been encouraged to have the resurrection of Jesus as the core of my Christianity because it was the core of the early church. And I believe that's how it should be for everyone. Our faith should rise and fall on, did Jesus rise from the dead? If he did, then the blood of his cross can cover all of our sins. If he rose from the dead, he can offer us eternal life. If he rose from the dead, he can protect us from ever perishing. But if he didn't rise, we have nothing. So I'm going to double down on making the resurrection the centrality of my faith. And there are more positives that I can list about this book, but this review is already getting a little long. I'm going to have one more review in a couple of weeks that'll cover the last 200 or so pages of this book and my overall thoughts on the Resurrection Volume 1 evidences. But I just want to say in closing, if you can get your hands on this book by Gary Habermas, it is great, and you should pick it up and read it.